The following was recorded at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Not jumping to conclusions today on the world. I'm Marco Werman. The investigation into what brought down that Egypt Airjet is just starting. This security expert says don't jump to conclusions, but
I also don't want to be blind to the reality that airplanes do not fall out of the sky for no reason.
Also an Army chaplain who quit his job over U.S. drone policy and turned to activism.
I became a stockholder of Honeywell just so that I could confront the CEO, David Cody, on their profiting from armed drones.
Plus that feeling you get when a broken jukebox comes back to life.
You feel like you want to dance. And when I hear the sound, I hear the music, okay, how I can make it better.
Those stories today on The World. Thank you for being with us. We start on a heavy note today, the loss of an airliner. There's still a lot we don't know about what happened to Egypt Air Flight 804. Here's what we do know. It was en route from Paris to Cairo early this morning. The Airbus 320 was cruising at 37,000 feet. Moments later, the plane went down. The World's Matthew Bell is here in the studio with me. Aside from what I just stated, Matthew, what else is worth pointing out about the crash so far?
So the flight, Marco, took off late last night from Paris. Just before 2:30 in the morning, the pilot spoke with air traffic controllers in Greece. Apparently, there were no problems. But then just a few minutes later, the airliner made a sudden 90-degree lurch to the left. Then it made a turn to the right, did a full 360, and dropped out of the sky. This is all from flight data information that people have tracked. This all happened above the Mediterranean Sea, about halfway between the island of Crete and the Egyptian coast. We don't know why this happened to the plane, but it increasingly looks like it did crash and it was catastrophic.
What are government authorities saying at this point?
French President François Hollande came out and said that no hypothesis would be left aside. He mentioned terrorism, said they'd be looking at that possibility. The aviation minister from Egypt went a bit further. He said that terrorism was probably a more likely cause than a mechanical issue for this crash. Egyptian officials have confirmed that some wreckage from the flight has been found in the water. But again, there's an awful lot that we don't know at this point. U.S. officials, for their part, have expressed condolences. They say that they're not ruling anything out at this point and that the United States is providing assistance with the search effort.
What about the passengers on board?
There were 66 people. That includes 10 crew members, about half of them Egyptians, 15 people from France, 2 Iraqis, and then 1 person each from a number of countries: Algeria, Belgium, Britain, Canada, Chad, Kuwait, Portugal, Saudi Arabia, Sudan. Marco, I saw some video online of people who had gone to the Cairo airport this morning. They were coming out of the building. They had talked to airline officials, apparently, and they were just shaking their heads, obviously distraught, and just said, we have no information, that they were being told really no details at all.
Some experts have been saying throughout the day that sabotage may be increasingly likely, citing lax controls at airports and loose hiring and security policies. And that just wouldn't be only at Charles de Gaulle Airport, would it? Not in this case.
Exactly. That's a hugely important question. But to make it even more complicated, you just look at this one plane had actually touched down on the ground in 4 different countries in just the previous 24 hours. It was in Eritrea. It had been in Tunisia, in Egypt, and in France. So you look at the reality of the international aviation system the way it is right now, and security is really only going to be as strong as the weakest link.
The World's Matthew Bell, thank you.
Thank you.
Juliette Kayyem is a former counterterrorism official with the Obama administration. She now teaches at Harvard and is the author of Security Mom. You tweeted earlier, after one of today's earlier press conferences, Juliette, no point dithering on what is known already. Unforgivable press conference. Why'd you say that?
Well, at that stage, the Egyptian spokespeople were even unwilling to say that the plane was down. They were still calling it missing. Meanwhile, an hour before, you had the French president saying that the plane went down. And anyone knew by that stage, and you certainly just know from experience, that planes do not go missing for hours on end. At that stage, it was a couple hours without there being some kind of failure. We don't know what that failure is yet. And look, this is coming from the perspective of a history of concern about Egypt and Egypt Air, about their transparency in these airline accidents.
How have you seen the response to the tragedy kind of unfold throughout the day? Or you think there's been kind of an attempt to avoid jumping to conclusions as time has moved?